So this is our final sermon in the series on this book, Becoming a Future-Ready Church. And there's still a copy out on the table out in front of the sanctuary if you want to borrow and read, or I can lend someone my copy. There's probably another one floating around the church somewhere. But I wanted to share with you a quote from a different book that I have been thinking about this week, and that I actually think about quite a lot. This is from The Score by T. Nguyen. T is a philosopher. He is a philosophy professor, and his area of specialty is aesthetics. He works on this philosophy of beauty kind of thing, this branch that asks questions like, what is beautiful? What is beauty? What makes something beautiful? How do we know beauty when we find it? What do we do with it? How do we make things more beautiful? And his very specific area is, how are games beautiful? How are games art? What can we do with games? So this is a quote from close to the very beginning of the book. I'll annotate it on the fly just a little bit. I'm writing this book because of an email from a student. She'd seen one of my lectures where I talked about the mystery of why games and metrics hit so differently. I'd started talking about the two main threads at the center of the mystery. Striving play, the stuff that we do for fun, the stuff that we try to get better at because we want to get better at it, and value capture, the ways that those metrics we are handed tell us what is supposed to be important, so that we follow those paths, whether we want to or not. When I gave the lecture, I didn't have a good answer yet. I was just fumbling around, chasing a chaos of connections. But the student wrote me and said the talk had pulled her out of a 5-year depressive spiral. She turned out to be a lot like me, an Asian American kid, the child of immigrants, pushed by her parents to keep a perfect 4.0 GPA and get into the most highly ranked college. She was also an athlete, a competitive golfer, and she said she'd been struggling with anorexia, obsessed with her BMI. See, she had been handed a bunch of metrics, and they had captured her values. She was stuck striving after that perfect GPA, trying to get that handicap to be better, trying to get that BMI to be lower and lower and lower. She said my talk had made her realize that she'd been trapped in all kinds of bad games. Life had given her some scoring systems, and she'd just been trying to get as high a score as she could without wondering if she should have accepted them into her heart in the first place. Thinking about these things as games, she said, had helped her get some distance from the rankings and metrics. She could step back and ask herself if she actually wanted to accept these systems, if they really mattered to her. She sent me a picture of her phone. She'd changed the default background so it gave her a message, a reminder, every time she looked at it. Her phone says, "Is this the game you really want to be playing?" Every year, near the beginning of the year, I open up the computer and I go to the data hub of the United Church of Christ to fill out the forms for the denomination. They like to collect this data. They love to collect this data. They put it in an annual statistical report. They share it with religion researchers. It helps the denomination know what is going on. It helps individual churches and clergy and lay people who look through the data understand what is happening in other parts of the United Church of Christ. So I sit down and I put in our membership. How many people are members of the congregation? How many people did we lose? How many people did we lose because they died? How many people did we lose because they walked away? How many people did we lose because we just noticed that they're gone and took them off the rolls? How many people did we gain? How many people came in and affirmed their baptism? How many people showed up with a letter of transfer, which is apparently still a thing? How many were confirmed? How did we grow? How did we decline? How did we get bigger? How did we get smaller? What is our average attendance like on a Sunday morning? How many people fill this sanctuary or show up in fellowship hall or hang out with us on Sunday morning? What are their rough ages? How many kids are there? Do we have a Sunday school? How many folks are there? How many people are volunteering for it? How many people show up at Bible study or Crafty Stitchers or whatever else? How many people? And how much money? What's the budget like? How much do you give to the denomination? Do you have an endowment? How big is the endowment? What happens with the endowment? It is question after question after question like this. They are numbers. And I know that for most of them, the number is supposed to be bigger. That is a sign of growth and success and being a good church. And I know that for most of them, the number is smaller. And that is supposed to be a sign of decline and failure and being a bad church. And good churches have good pastors, and bad churches have bad pastors. And so I end up leaving this little exercise that is an important exercise because the denomination needs to know these numbers, always feeling just a little less than great about myself. On a similar note, every day I open my email and someone has sent me an email saying, if you send me $30, well, $29.95, I will send you a digital book with all of the secrets on how to grow your church. One of those secrets is you should really join my online community. That's $150 a month, but we won't go that far yet. And I will show you, I will give you, I will make you understand everything that you need to do to get more people through the doors and to get them to stay and to get them to become disciples and to get them to give so that you can be a big church, a growing church, a good church. And I'm always struck by the problem with this, which is one, I've paid the $29.95 several times. I have learned the stuff, I know the stuff, I have implemented as much of the stuff as we can, and it turns out that a lot of the stuff doesn't actually guarantee anything. But here's the real problem I have, which is this is important to me. I think that the church is an important thing. I think that God is an important thing. I think that Christ is an important person. I think people would love to get in on this. I think there are people who want this. I think there are people who need this. And if I had the secret to getting everyone who needs this through the doors, I would give that away for free. Because when you have something awesome that you think everyone should have, like the cure for cancer, or insulin, or the grace of the God who is love, you give that away. I think over the years that I've learned a lot of the supposed secrets of church growth, but I want to tell you I didn't get into this to be someone who knows a lot of the secrets of church growth. I got into this. I got over all of my theological issues with ordination and separation and saying these people get to stand up in front and talk to people. I got over all of that because I was working raising money for an organization that housed people, and I wanted more of that. I wanted more places to look at the world and say, there's a problem and we can solve it at least just a little. I wanted more of this thing that houses people, that feeds people, that clothes people, that cares for people, that loves people. Because I kind of think that once you're doing that, once you're in on that, things get better. We nurture God's reign of love around us, and it grows, and more people come in just as a side effect. Because who wouldn't want to be part of that? Our reading today is from the book of Acts. As Mary said, Christ has died and Christ has risen, and Christ has gone, but will return. And the apostles, the disciples, all these people who knew this Jesus fellow, and a bunch of people who they have talked to, have started gathering together and making a new community. A new community that isn't exactly like the Judaism that surrounds them, and certainly isn't like the Roman Empire that surrounds them, that is a little thing in the midst of all that, a mustard seed that has been planted. And the book of Acts has several of these moments, several of these stories where it says, here's the early church, here's what it was like, here's a thing that they did, and that very day 500 people showed up and were baptized and joined. They became part of that community. They started giving to that community everything that they had. They started showing up for committee meetings, very important in the early church, I'm sure. They started doing all of the things. And we often take those as signs of miracles, that something astonishing was happening in this early church. But research has been done. Rodney Stark, a historian, ran through some numbers. He looked at the supposed growth of the early church, how many people were joining, and he looked at the supposed growth, much more better documented, of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints not that long ago. And what he found, or at least what he proposes, is that the early church grew at a perfectly normal rate for a new organization, for a new religion, for a new whatever. The early church was just another thing that was growing. There was no miracle. There was just the steady addition of new people. And I should add that in that early church, almost none of those people were born into it. Almost all of those people had to show up one day. And they showed up one day because they saw something that was amazing. Again, Stark lays this out. Here was this community in a world that was not good for women, that was largely better for women. So women showed up. Here is this community that would accept foreigners in a world where foreigners were always suspect, so foreigners showed up. Here was this community that was good for children in a world that was often not good for children, so children showed up. It was good for slaves in a world that is not good for slaves because no world is good for slaves, so slaves showed up. The marginalized showed up. People showed up because they saw this community that would welcome them, that would care for them, that was feeding the hungry, that was clothing the naked, that was housing the homeless, that was caring for the poor, that was visiting strangers, that was healing the sick, that was doing all of those things. and they said, my God, I want to be a part of that. Where do I sign up? How can I receive this grace? And having received this grace, how can I share this grace? How can I put it out there for everyone to see, for everyone to feel, for everyone to have? Don't get me wrong, I know the metrics are important. I know we worry sometimes about the number of people who are showing up or what the budget looks like. I know that this sanctuary used to be full twice on Sunday mornings. I know that when I started, it was full once on Sunday mornings. I know that since COVID, it's just kind of settled into a certain amount of smallness. I know that our budget used to be nice and big and healthy. I know that over the years we have made cuts. We have trimmed the fat. The fat adds flavor. I know that this year we are again looking at a $50,000 deficit. And that while we can sustain that this year, next year that's going to be a problem. I know that we have had hard conversations. And I know that we have said, we need to grow, we need more people. If we can just get more people and more money and all of that stuff, then we will be fine. But I am going to tell you this. The numbers are not as important as the life. There are big churches, huge churches, with thousands of people on a weekend on their multiple campuses, with clergy who are extremely well paid, with programs and programs and programs, with budgets that would make a small country blush, that have almost no life of the spirits within them, that are too busy closing their doors to other people who don't match their demographics, that are too busy working to hurt people through their political action, that are too busy doing all of the stuff that God, through the prophets, repeatedly tells us not to do, and that are too busy not doing the stuff that God, through the prophets, repeatedly tells us to do. Big does not mean alive. And small does not mean dying. It certainly does not mean dead. Because let me tell you, while I would love to be the pastor of a big church with all of the honor and prestige that comes with that, while I would love to see the sanctuary full on a Sunday morning, while I would love to have 2 services on a Sunday morning, I would kind of love having 2 services on a Sunday morning. That's a lot. Well, I would love having to get more tables for Fellowship Hall. Well, I would love to see those classrooms full. And while I love Easter morning and Christmas Eve and the occasional funeral when there are so many people here, the moments when I am proudest of this church are when this chancel is full of stuff for the referral center. The moments when I am proudest of this church are the times when someone from an organization halfway around the world is standing at that lectern and telling us what your gifts have done. The moments when I am proudest of this church are when I see some of the kids who I don't usually see on Sunday mornings overpacking bags for the summer lunchbox program at the United Methodist Church, or when I see Steve Thayer standing in front of CPAC emceeing a star performance, or when I see some of the kids showing up to school board meetings to let the authorities know what they think about stuff, or when I know that we have members who serve on boards and committees and councils all over this town, who I know are being a voice for the gospel that they learn here, are bringing the Spirit of God to new places, are planting and nurturing and caring for God's reign of love everywhere. Small does not mean dying. Small certainly does not mean dead. Small can mean alive. But in order to be alive, we have to be alive. And if we want to turn that life into growth, then we need to share that life with others. We need to be able to say to people, come, be alive. Show up on a Sunday morning. I will come and pick you up and bring you here. I will hang out with you through the entire thing. We can sit together in the sanctuary, and I will introduce you to people at fellowship time. Because I have this life, and I can't help but share it. I have to share it because it's too much for me to carry. It is too wonderful for me to keep to myself. You have to try it. Let me help you try it. And so to that end, I have an ask. This is not the takeaway. The takeaway will be different, but this is important. This is important. If you are getting something out of this church, of this congregation, of this community, out of this Sunday morning, invite a friend. If they are unsure, say, I will go with you. If they don't want to come, that's fine. We're not for everyone. But just maybe they will say yes. And if you want an especially powerful time to do that for, may I recommend the fall kickoff on September 20th. You can make some plans, you can get some people together, and maybe, just maybe, we can spread some life. We can spread some grace. We can spread some love. We can get away from worrying about numbers and start thinking about vitality. We can stop thinking about those metrics and start playing the game that God has invited us to. The game at this table, where we eat together and drink together and love together. This game of blessing, which is just a little like hot potato. Because once you have blessing, you can't possibly just hold on to it. You have to get it to the next person. And they do the same and the same and the same until everyone gets a little blessing on them. And until the world is full. Absolutely full. Absolutely full of God's abundant love.